lo and behold, we are back. It's been exactly like 3 seconds for me, but it will have been a whole day for you guys. That's because of the scheduling for my videos, but after losing in what felt like 10 minutes against Belcher, I mean, I just gotta finish out this league right here and right now. I want to play some real Magic and not just get comboed out on turn 2. So, well, I mean, it would be ironic if I ended up playing as Infect or something. Of course, you'll know before I do, since it'll be in the title of this video, but I don't know that yet, so no spoiling. Shh. It's a secret for now. Anyways, I will see you guys in the games. Alright, we have a match. Let's see if we can manage this 2-3 record. That's a very large chat window for a reason that I don't understand. We definitely want to play first, so that's nice. Turn 2 Explorer into turn 3 Dryad with Titan mana already. I'm cool with it. If we draw a Karn, then we can play a turn 3 Karn here, so let's lead on Snow Forest and pass it back. Getting green sources out for Garenbrig and setting up a potential untapped Garenbrig as a land that we can play if we want. I guess technically giving our opponent a little less information here. Alright, Gabo, what you got for us? Another land, okay. And another Explorer is interesting. I don't know how I feel about the other Explorer. Let's play out the Hanweir so that we can copy it if we have to. If we happen to draw an Amulet. As well as a Titan. There's a Karn. So we do have the turn 3 Karn as previously mentioned. Let's throw out this Growth Chamber here. Pick up the Battlements and pass it back. I don't know how much turn 3 Karn helps us here. It might be better to get a Dryad out so we can trade with one of these Gobos. We can also Dryad plus Explore here. That seems pretty enticing to me. Alright, let's float the mana. We'll play a Hanweir. And we'll float its colorless so we can have a green floating for this Explorer. And we'll play the Dryad. Almost use the green. Don't want to do that. Ghost Quarter. Explore. And let's get a Gruul Turf out there as a red source to activate this Hanweir if we so desire. We'll pick up the Ghost Quarter here. And we'll pass it back. So now we have a blocker. We have a Karn this upcoming turn if we absolutely need it. They throw a Bolt at our face, which is interesting. I suppose they don't mind if we block a Gabo. I don't know. Lava Spike us. Okay. Can yield through this turn. We're not doing anything. Oh, man. They have another burn spell here? Yeah, that's just game. Alright, well, maybe we can get some sideboarding done here. Man, these last couple matches have been fast. They really have. We can bring in Sage for Eidolon, and it also would trade with a creature if we did. I don't know if I dislike that. I guess I'm fine with it. I'm not really inclined to bring in Dismember in this matchup. I might be inclined to bring in the Engineered Explosives, though. That said, I think it's better in the board, since I find that we're unlikely to transmute Telarios for an EE, most likely. And I think it's more likely that we'd want to Karn and EE out of our sideboard so we can deal with a board state of several Goblins and Swift Spears and whatnot. I guess we do want the Cavern over one of these lands. And then we can trim Balaged because it's the slowest, I think. Let's see real quick if our opponent had Luris. Nope. Alright, so I think it's fine to side out the Bog here. Yeah, I guess we're just running it back like this. Very minimal changes here. We could board out the Karns and bring in something like Wormcoil, but I don't know. Maybe that would have been better to board out the Karns in general. This hand's way too slow, I think. This hand is way not too slow, so we'll absolutely keep this. And we gotta put one of these things back. I'm thinking it's going to be Grazer here, since we have the turn 2 Titan off of double Amulet with this Explorer, so I think that's a pretty easy one to ship. We'll be a little sad if our opponent has some kind of Smash to Smithereens type effect. Destructive Revelry, perhaps. But barring that, we'll be looking pretty hot here, so Red? I mean, not red. Red, our burn opponent is playing red? That's insane. Black? I was not expecting to see our opponent with a Black Leaf Cliffs in their deck, but that is cool. We did not get hit by the Thoughtseize, so we're good to go here. Float. Float. And we can actually pick up the Ghost Quarter here and play a Explore into Rot Farm for a little bit of additional mana production here. How about another Titan? Well, that is almost assuredly game. Attacking with double Primeval Titan is pretty good. Alright, so let's pick up the Rot Farm, I suppose. Here's Titan. And we can get a bounce land and any other land and cast another Titan, and then get a Hanweir and a red land and haze both of our Titans. Yeah, that was just a little too easy. I guess we stole game 2 in the same fashion that our opponent stole game 1, just by having all of the things that we needed. They had all the 1-drop burn spells, and we had the turn 2 Titan combo, so I guess that matches up. We could board out Karn and bring in Explosives and Wormcoil and possibly Sky Sovereign, which I don't hate. I do think that Karn is a little weak against our opponent. We at least want the Explosives. There's a possibility we should be bringing in Negate as well, but I don't know if holding up Negate is going to be the best thing that we can do here. Let's bring in the Wormcoil, and I'm not sure on the Sky Sovereign, to be honest. I think it's better than Bala, though, for example. And probably better than Negate also, so I guess why not? It's basically a 5-mana removal spell, but that might be good enough. Who knows? We'll just give it a shot. Well, we have our Wormcoil, and we have a turn 1 Amulet. Yeah, we'll try this. We'd love to draw a bounce land, and otherwise we have some stuff going on, so... Land, Gabo. Give us a land off the top. Explore. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but we'll deal. Here's an Amulet and a pass. Alright, land this time, Goblin Guides. Let's just get 2 lands off the top here. Double land. Grazer's actually not the worst. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the Sanctuary and get this Grazer out there. And use it to put the breeding pool into play. We couldn't do this in the opposite order because Sanctuary is only the spell side when it's in our hand, and you can't put it into play with a Grazer. So it's important to play the Sanctuary here instead of the breeding pool. And now we can explore, and hopefully... Not a land. Okay, whatever. We'll pass it back. Bounce land off the top would allow us to cast Wormcoil this upcoming turn, so that is our best possible draw. Bounce land. There we go. And we don't have to try to jam an Azusa here and get blown out by Lightning Bolt if our opponent has that. Or we could just get a second Amulet and do things the good old way here. Okay, so I'm going to lead on the Amulet. And we'll play a Rot Farm here. And, oh wait, we need to cancel our yields because one of them was to Amulet itself. So we can lead on Explore here, and if we draw a Titan, then we just get to Titan them, and if we don't draw a Titan, then we can just cast a Wormcoil Engine, so... Reclamation Sage. Alright, I guess we're playing Wormcoil. Although our opponent's tapped out, so we might as well pour out the rest of our hand here anyways. Maybe not the Rec Sage, but at least the Azusa for sure, and probably the Grazer too, although I don't think our opponent can safely attack into our Wormcoil Engine. I guess there's the slight possibility that... Or we can actually pick up the Bala for another cycle of an Explorer. I don't hate that idea. Let's put out this Azusa here. And that means that we have a Rot Farm, followed by a second Rot Farm picking up Bala. Let's just see how much mana this gives us. I think it's going to be enough to be able to Bala into Explorer and still cast Wormcoil. And if not, then we'll just slam Wormcoil and it'll be A-okay. Or our opponent can just concede because they've had enough of our garbage. Okay, well, they didn't really know what was going on, but I suppose they thought it was something ridiculous. So maybe it was. Oh, wait, no, I'm not trying to log off and close Magic Online. Actually, we can return to the game and see, would we have hit the Titan? We would have hit Dryad. So no, we would have just been playing a Wormcoil this turn, but I still think our opponent is hard-pressed to beat a Resolve Wormcoil engine, so whatever. Anyways, so we did manage to go 2 and 3. I have to admit, I'm a little dissatisfied by that last match there. It kind of felt ridiculous in every single game. Game 1, we got run over by opponents' multiple 1-drop burn spell draw. Game 2, we just turned to Titan them. And Game 3, they conceded before we even got to play our payoff card. So, I mean, I'm not complaining since we won the match, but wow, that was weird. Alright, so let's talk about the list that we have in front of us here. Are there changes that I would make? The answer is most certainly yes. I have found that in the version that plays both Titans and Karn the Great Creators, Bala Recovery is not really doing much. Because Bala Recovery is usually intended to give us additional access to threats here by way of getting like a Summoner's Pact from our graveyard, or something along those lines, and more frequently than not, especially in this list, since we have Karn, Bala Recovery just does not do anything, and it's been kind of disappointing. In all honesty, I have liked Bala Recovery in a non-Karn amulet list, and so maybe I'll continue to test it there. But I think for the purposes of a Karn build, Bala is not where we really want to be, and that allows us the ability to add a 4th Garenbrig, which I think is always welcome. That also gives us 2 additional slots, so that could be, for example, a 4th Karn, which I'm not opposed to, but we can also just return to the build, or a build similar to what we had before with the main board EE, because we definitely want engineered explosives in both the main and sideboard. As I discussed in one of the previous videos in this series, we most certainly want access to this one. And then we could do a Pact of Negation. That would be something to consider. But it also might be worth playing a copy or 2 of Ancient Stirrings instead, if the Pact is a little redundant and that we have more ways to play around counterspells than usual anyways with the addition of Karn. But I don't know. And then in the sideboard, I've seen a lot of people having success with Grafdigger's Cage. I'm not sure that I'm convinced that that's one that I would want to play, as in order for Cage to do things against the decks that it is most needed, for example, against Neoform, or against the Oops All Spells deck. I think it does something against them, right? Because they can't cast Salvage Titan from the graveyard. I'm not entirely certain. Let me pull up the card that I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the card, Grafdigger's Cage. Creatures in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. So this would hose Oops All Spells, of course. It would hose Neobrand because they can't Eldritch Evolution out a Grizzlebrand because it would be entering the battlefield from the library, for example. It doesn't do anything against some combos such as Living End, which is worth noting, but my personal opinion is that you have to have a very well lined up hand in order to make Grafdigger's Cage work. For example, you would have to be able to have a turn 2 Karn with an additional mana to play Cage, and that's ridiculously lucky. And otherwise, the Cage is taking up a valuable sideboard slot. We're not playing that terribly many Karn targets on our sideboard, because the Explosives is usually there anyway, so it's basically just these 5 cards giving us a functional 10-card sideboard. Otherwise, we'd have to consider cutting things like Dismember, or the Cavern, or Negates, or something along those lines. And that's not really something I'm super interested in, so... Oh, no, I don't want to put them in the main deck. What are you doing, deck? There we go. But yeah, so I'm not really a fan of Grafdigger's Cage personally, although I can't say I've played it, so maybe I ought to test with it, because things don't always play out in the way that you think they will. It's quite possible that these decks like Oops All Spells would stumble and give you enough time to get a Cage online, but we're not even playing 4 Karn the Great Creators, just 3, so I don't think that maximizing access to Cage in those types of matchups is going to be good. And I think that Pithing Needle does a similar thing to Cage in matchups where it matters. For example, against Devoted Druid, we can't stop them from Eldritch Evolutioning things out, or not evolutioning, but whatever they play, Finale of Devastation. But Pithing Needle naming the Devoted Druid stops it from being able to untap, since that is not a mana ability, and that means that Pithing Needle is a card we can get from our sideboard for that matchup, but it can also deactivate things like opposing Karn the Great Creators, or other Planeswalkers like Karn Liberated, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Liliana of the Veil, those kinds of things. We could name like Ghost Quarter or Field of Ruin if we needed to protect our mana base, things along those lines. So I think that just having a Pithing Needle kind of covers those bases. We can name Inkmoth Nexus, for example, against Infect, which seems like it could be relevant. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not really a particularly big fan of Cage, so I'm not sure that I would include that one. I don't know. Maybe the pact negation is not necessary, though. I just have to do more testing, but I'm pretty sure this is basically exactly the same list that I was originally playing in Karn Amulet. Let me pull up the Karn Amulet list I have here, and we'll see if there are any differences. Okay, so we are back here with the last list that I left off on Karn Amulet without playing any of the Zendikar flip cards. And there are a few minor differences, I would say. The biggest one that immediately pops out to me is the lack of Walking Ballista in the list that I was just playing today and in this last week. And the reason I cut Ballista is because I found myself never really having a window to search for it. Ideally, you'd be able to pick up a Ballista and use it as a threat against an opponent's, like a black-green opponent's discard and stuff, if they're able to deal with your Wormcoil Engine, but I've often found that being able to get Pithing Needle or Engineered Explosives from the sideboard is good enough in those matchups that we don't really need a Ballista inside, and I never found myself wanting to search for a Ballista in any of the games that we had played with Ballista in the sideboard, as well as the games I've played off the channel, that is, in testing. So I don't mind trimming the Ballista here. The rest of the Karn package is still the same. We still have our Beast Withins and Rex Stages. The only thing that's different about the sideboard is that the Cavern that was up here in the previous list, of course, you can always just jump back about 30 seconds or whatever, however long ago it was, you know, because you're watching the video, but you can jump back and see that there was a Cavern in the sideboard, the second one, and in this list, it is in the main over the Castle Garenbrig that I just added to the other list, and I'm not sure that it makes a huge difference, but I think I do personally like having access to an additional Garenbrig, as Garenbrig does some very powerful things with Azusa and just getting to Titan mana, although I will admit that this list is not quite as adept somehow at getting Titan than the other Amulet lists that I have played. I feel like if you just play a traditional Amulet list, you're far more likely to actually draw and resolve a Primeval Titan. And maybe it's just because you're more incentivized to mulligan down to hands that have a better setup for casting Primeval Titan, or even ones that already have Primeval Titan in hand, or a Summoner's Pact or something. Whereas with the Karn Amulet list, you're more likely to keep a hand with Karn as your threat, and then possibly never to top deck a Primeval Titan, similar to the types of hands that you can keep where you get to turn 2 an Azusa or a Dryad, and you have to top deck a Titan, but you're on a mulligan, so you keep it anyways, and you just never see a Titan. I feel like that happens somewhat frequently if you keep a hand with Karn instead of like a Summoner's Pact or something else as a different threat, so that's a little bit of an interesting dynamic, but I'm not sure that that means it's not worth playing the Karns. I think that the Karns do add some amount of depth. They're definitely very fun to play, but I don't know, especially with Shadow and Red Prowess being at the top of the meta, I'm not sure that Karn is exactly where I would want to be. Against all these blue control decks, for sure, I like having access to Karn. And I think Karn helps to fix those matchups very nicely. So I guess it depends on the room that you're playing in, or I suppose the opponents that you happen to face if you're playing on Magic Online. If you know that the people that you're going to FNM with, for example, are playing lots of Uro / Omnath type control decks with Aether Gusts all over the place and all that kind of stuff, I would definitely suggest playing the list that you see on screen right here, where you have Pact of Negation to search for in order to play around Aether Gust if you need to resolve a Titan, but you can also play around different types of counterspells by trying to resolve a Karn instead. And the only thing that really punishes Karn is Force of Negation, and that's a card that is typically even boarded out by a lot of control players. I myself never liked boarding out too heavily on Force of Negations, as they're an easy way to counter your opponent's Summoner's Pact or their Karn the Great creators, although I suppose it's pretty easy to play around a Force of Negation with the Summers Pact if you want to, so I don't know, maybe not. Regardless, I think that Karn is a pretty good addition. Plus, you get some additional counter magic in the sideboard. We've seen the negates do some work in these control matchups, which is pretty interesting to me. And yeah, I mean, this is where I would want to be against control, but against the more aggressive, like, Monastery Swiftspear type decks, I think that you might be better off in a list that is without Karn, believe it or not. So it's kind of being torn in several different directions here. I don't know. It's definitely interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you prefer a list with Karn, a list without Karn? Let me know what that means to you and what list you think is better, and I'll do a little bit of analysis. Maybe I can do a bit of learning, as I am only somewhat new to playing with Karn the Great Creator. So, anyways, that's way too much talking for the end of this video. I will see you guys for the next one. Make sure you let me know in the comments what deck it is that you'd like to see me play, what kind of configuration. Maybe I could do a video splashing white, or maybe I could do a video with an entirely different deck. If you so desired that, you could play some Esper Control or Blue-Red Kiki or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next league. This is Red Face Menace, signing off.